This is Luke Martin. Nice pass to Young. That's rejected by Fingleton. His 6th of the game. To Williams. To Fingleton.
Big man right there. Fingleton knocks it down over McGonigal.
Opens the door, ducks through the doorway.
He's big. We didn't realize he was that big. And we had a very small car to take him back.
Every time he walked into a gym, he had a target on his back.
Everyone wanted to beat Neil Fingleton first and Holy Name second.
He sings a lot. He's like in school, he's quiet. He's good at school and everything, but he makes me laugh a lot.
There was so much energy in here when Neil played basketball.
And I fed him meatballs, and I could not believe how fast he could eat a meatball.
And here's this 7'5", 7'6" guy who walks in, and he's in a Volkswagen Golf.
And they'd be like, oh, you'd have to be taller than that. He'd be like, no, I'm just 6'2", 6'2".
I remember on several occasions him showing me an impersonation that he did of Mick Jagger.
And you'd look over, and all you'd see is these huge legs next to you.
Each year, like I said, he got better and better. And he got bigger, and he got stronger, and he got more confident.
He put his hands up on the rim and was stretching his back, holding the rim.
All you could hear was...
When we needed him to score 25 points, he scored 25 points. When we need him to get 15, 20 rebounds, he did.
He ended up being the Massachusetts Gatorade Player of the Year, the best player in Massachusetts.
Again, he was the big lefty, big smooth.
And I'd just like to think that people would follow the dreams, just like he did.
One of the teachers referred to him as an angel sent by God.
Neil was born in hospital in Durham on the 18th of December, 1980. ABBA again were in the charts. Super Trooper was the song this time. Fitted Neil very well.
When we were growing up, we shared a bedroom together, which was obviously what a lot of kids did back in the 80s.
Neil was very laid back, where Michael was, everything had to be right. He liked everything done right, so you can imagine they shared a bedroom, what it was like. He played football for the school, well actually he was in goal. He tried his hand at hockey, ice hockey, and then it was judo. Him and Michael actually went together to the judo. I believe it was a Mr. Simpson at the school who really tried to get Neil to progress into basketball.
And at first Neil was like, no, don't really like it. Neil always wanted to be an airplane pilot. He kind of fell into the role of it. Once he started playing it, he realised he could play it and realised that most people around him weren't going to be able to play against him.
He saw this kid in the field playing football with his pals, so David stopped the van, went out to see this guy who more or less filled the goal up and asked, do you play basketball? Neil said, a little bit at school, but I'd like to play more. They exchanged numbers, and we got a call the following day from Christine's mum to say, where do you train?
I didn't hear the name Neil Fingleton, I saw the Neil Fingleton who walked down halfway crouched through a gym door.
That night when we got home after the first session, Tony Hanson was called, and at the time Tony was the coach for the Mohawks, which myself and David played for. Contacted Tony and said, listen, basically Tony, we've got this kid here he's got zero coordination, he's got zero fitness, he's got a real hunger for the game, you need to meet him. And by the way, he's about 7 foot.
As a basketball player at 13, 14, he hadn't played. He was, as a coach would once say, I can teach you how to play basketball, I can't teach you how to be 7'4".
I remember when it was in the newspaper and we were classed as the tall family, I think it was in the Daily Mirror. They came out and took a photo. I remember having to pose for it in front of the house and didn't really think much of it then. But the fact that Neil was well over 7 foot when he was at school would attract a lot of attention. And it was a bit too much attention at one point. I always remember my mother, she would get in touch with the school, don't let anybody in to talk to Neil. We're getting a little bit sick of it now. And the school were really good about it and protecting Neil's privacy, because it was quite overwhelming, somebody who's, what, 13, 14, having a lot of media attention because of your height. Yeah, I think genetically we are a tall family, and our great-grandfather was my height, so I'm about 6'9", which was very tall for the 1940s, 50s. And he lived till he was well into his 70s. Our mother, Christine, she's 6 foot. My sister's 6 foot. I'm 6'9", Neil was 7'7". So you can't argue that we weren't a tall family.
He'd come from 14 years of kind of almost being trying to blend in with a crowd and be, as people would say, normal. Basketball brought him out of that, and I was with him at that time when that transition happened between not being comfortable with who he was or confused about how he should be, to realising I don't have to be anything, just be me.
And I think it was from there that Neil realised that because of his height, that it could be something that could be to his advantage.
And it was Tony who really wanted Neil to, you know, further his career and go to America.
I got a call from Tommy Moore, who's a friend of mine, who's the assistant coach at UConn. Told me he had 2 kids who had come to a camp at UConn, and they were very interested in coming to the United States and play high school basketball. Asked me if I could accommodate them. And I said, well, let me ask around, because housing is going to be the most important thing. The first person I called was Phil.
JP's one of my best friends, so I said, look, I'll take him until you find him a house. I said, but I'm on the road a lot, I'm traveling.
You know, we got a place for him to live, so we can definitely take him. And then I went up to Holy Name and talked to Father Madden, and he said, no problem, love to do it. Talked to Jimmy Manzello, you know, so we got it all straightened out.
JP said to me, this kid really wants to come, and he was coming with a friend of his. And so I started the whole process of a transfer student.
At the 11th hour, the guard decided that he didn't want to come. So I figured at that point, you know, Neil probably wouldn't want to come too, but, you know, to his credit, he decided he was going to come. And so we were all set, and, you know, we were ready for Neil, and then our lives changed.
JP, the coach, Phil Giarusso, and I went to pick him up at Logan Airport. I think it was a Sunday afternoon.
So we sat there and waited, and I'll never forget, the door opened, and this guy came out, and he was pretty tall. It was either me or JP, probably me, walked up to him and said, are you Neil? And he said, no. And the guy had to be like 6'6", 6'7", he was a big guy. So he walked away, and we're like, oh boy, okay. So a couple minutes later, this opens the door, ducks through the doorway, and comes through the door. I said, Jay, our lives will never be the same.
He's big. We didn't realize he was that big. And we had a very small car to take him back.
To get in the car, it was pretty funny. We put the passenger seat all the way back, and then we lowered the back of the seat so he could sit there. And JP and Father Madden had to sit in the back seat next to each other, and I drove.
Yeah, he couldn't fit in a bed, a normal bed. It was, you know, everything, things that you didn't think about until he got there. You know, just constant adjustments. And
an absolutely massive thing for a kid that age to do. I mean, my mum thought it was terrible to let a kid go that far to the other side of the world. Hadn't really met anybody. Well, he hadn't met anybody, and, you know, it was just conversations on the phone.
It didn't faze him. Like the photo shoots, like the media, Neil just transitioned without conscious thought.
He was determined. That's where he was going. And so that's where he went.
But to allow your son to do that, to take that on, to put trust in others, and by you putting trust in others, you teach your son to put trust in others.
He wouldn't have known this, but he was welcomed with open arms, and he could not have landed in a better spot.
There
You know, everybody thought that because we had this 7'4", 7'5" guy, that he was going to be Shaquille O'Neal. But Neil hadn't played a lot of basketball. And like I said, we had a very good team. So with Neil, we just said, we're going to go really slow. We're going to take our time. He needs to learn a lot of things. And he's still growing. So we had to get him in shape, number one. Number two, we had to get him up to speed what American basketball was like.
He was proportioned well, you know, big shoulders. So we definitely felt we had something we could work with.
Just catching the ball. He had trouble catching the ball. He had trouble getting up and down the court more than 2 or 3 times without getting tired. You know, he had trouble keeping the ball up. For a big guy, you know, he'd bring the ball down. He had trouble catching the ball in transition.
You don't want to say he was a project because he wasn't a project, but we just had to get him used to all the rules, all the set plays, the defense, all that kind of stuff, and he picked up on everything.
By the end of the year, he was in not only the Worcester Telegram, the Boston Globe, the New York Times, the Washington Post, articles in England. I mean, so he was here for 4 or 5 months, and he was on national TV. He was on local TV.
Yes, the rumors you've heard are true. Holy Name sophomore center Neil Fingleton really is 7'5" tall. And whether watching him play basketball or walk through the halls, you can't help being taken back by just how tall he is. But aside from his height, he's just like any other high school student.
He's just a regular guy. I mean, he's just bigger than everybody else, but other than that, he's just a regular kid, just like us. We always try to get him to go to the basket and dunk more, but he was trying to shoot these fallaways. Like, Neil, come on, you can just dunk on anyone, man. Stop shooting these jump shots.
He sings a lot. He's like in school, he's quiet. He's good in school and everything, but he makes me laugh a lot.
That first game, I think he might have goaltended 7 or 8 shots. You know, they're shooting and he's just swatting it out of the way, which was funny. But, you know, he learned quick once you tell him, hey, it has to be on the way up.
He's a typical 17-year-old kid. He likes music, he likes to hang around with the guys, and I'm sure he likes to look at the girls, too. So he's a regular kid. Just, you know, God made him 7'5", and with that, there comes a few burdens.
While Fingleton may have similar interests to most kids his age, Neil does have to deal with things his peers don't.
I think the most hardest part is buying clothes, like pants, shirts. Shoes are not too bad because like I've seen people with like 6'3" and like size 15 shoes, so I'm a size 15, so it's not too bad.
It's kind of sad to go out with him in a social atmosphere because you know, everybody's gawking at him, looking at him, and there's a lot of ignorant people that come up with ignorant statements to him.
I think people came out of curiosity in the beginning, but like with us, I think the more people saw Neil, the more it was just, you know, he's a big guy. So I think after the first year, the novelty of coming to see the biggest guy play was over, and it was more just seeing Holy Name play.
While being 7'5" can be a burden socially, it's a blessing on the basketball court. Give it to me, big man. This kid has good footwork, and I'm sure it's because of his soccer background. He can move. He's not, you know, just this mechanical robot giant going up and down the court. And that was one thing that really stood out to me. And he had soft hands.
You know, I'm sure 2 years from now he'll be on the cover of all those little Street and Smith things and so forth. But it's terrific. I mean, it's he's really a remarkable player.
I think someday he will play in the NBA. And how good of a player he becomes will depend on how hard he works. And he's learning that, what it means to work hard. So I think the sky is the limit. And you know what? Couldn't happen to a nicer kid.
And at 7'5", that sky seems well within Neil Fingleton's reach.
I don't think I can explain to you how our neighborhood and then the city embraced Neil and looked out for Neil.
It was just amazing that it went so well right from the beginning. And that's really a tribute to his character and his personality.
Teachers, administrators, guidance people, we were all responsible for his school stuff. He had friends that were responsible for his social stuff. He had JP and Phil and all those people who were his family.
We were sitting down, and I said, we should go grocery shopping, Neil. Do you, he says, I cook. I said, what do you cook? He says, I cook beans. We're in the aisles and we're looking for the beans. And I said, I don't know where the hell these beans are. And Neil said, they're over there. And he was looking over the shelves and could see into the next aisle. That's where the beans were.
My sister Mary would cook for him all the time. My cousin Annunzia would cook for him all the time.
And I fed him meatballs, and I could not believe how fast he could eat a meatball.
Another place he loved to eat was Pub 99, and he would just take down plates full of buffalo wings. Endless amounts of buffalo wings.
People had shirts made, powered by Neil. Like, I remember there's a deli in the city, Belcito's, that he had shirt made because he used to go there all the time. And
so if you come in, into the kitchen, okay, the rest of us, we put up a Post-it note, it's always chest high, right? Or we come in, we put our wallet on the counter. So Neil would come in and he would lean on top of the fridge. Now his wallet, wallet and keys, top of the fridge, right? So things you can't even relate to. I mean, Post-it notes at the top of cabinets.
We would talk often, like, hey, did you do the homework for this? Like, yeah. He's like, yeah, me too. Can I just check our answers? Yeah, you sure can, pal. Like,
I remember some of the stories, like people kind of coming up to him, and someone would just ask him, how tall are you? And he'd say 6'2". And they'd be like, oh, you'd have to be taller than that. And he'd be like, no, I'm just 6'2". And the person would walk away so baffled, and he would just keep such a straight face. Or, another time someone would say, do you play basketball? And he's like, no, I've never touched a basketball in my life.
Neil, can you drop by my office? I need you to check up on, this grade or this paper, or you have to sign something, or whatever was the reason. So I can remember him saying to me, Mrs. Ivas, why don't you drop by my office? Which meant he wanted me to come up to the cafeteria to where he was playing cards with these guys so I could meet with him during his priv.
It was different. And then every now and then he would be that 17-year-old again, with the humor and the way he would do things and how he would have to react as an attraction within his high school. Right. And how the big person always is the target.
We had to suspend him once, It was in the study hall, as I recall, and there was this kid who was an annoying kid, and was giving him a hard time, and for the first and only time ever, he had it, and the study hall teacher said that he had his hand on the kid's neck, leaning him over, and the kid's legs were flailing.
Neil, there's something wrong with my car. I said, do you know what happened? His face went flush. He was just red. Yeah. I didn't have any food. So Corey, his friend Corey, who was older and had his license, I let Corey use the car to go get some food.
I got a call from Phil saying, what'd you do to my car? And I honestly had no idea what he was talking about. And I was thinking Phil's probably like, this kid's lying, he's just trying to hold it up. And I'm like, Phil, I don't know what you're talking about. And I just kept saying it.
So I talked to Neil that night and I said, I'm coming home at 6 o'clock on Friday. I said, you better be in that house. I said, and we're gonna have a talk. And he was crying and the whole thing. And his knees got caught in the steering wheel and he went straight across the road and over a curb and into the park. And he scraped the whole bottom of the car on the curb. So that's what he finally told me.
I'm a nodding dog and she's long gone.
Like we were just Holy Name Napoleons. Now we were a Holy Name with Neil Fingleton.
People can say it's easy to be 7'6" and it makes it easy to play basketball, but realistically it puts a huge target on your back. He had the biggest target on his back every single game that Holy Name played. Everyone wanted to beat Neil Fingleton first and Holy Name second.
He had baby steps, but by the end of our first season, he really came a long way. He worked hard.
We tried to teach him the right way, at least the way we thought, the right way to play basketball. So his numbers were very strong. Could have been stronger if we allowed it, but he spread the ball around.
Very unselfish, to the point where I tried to feed him more because, the only way you're going to develop is if you get the ball and you do something with it.
a lot of people started coming to the games, and I think that helped with his hey, what can I be here, you know?
It brought everybody, everybody would be at his games. Like every game, we would all go to Neil's games. And from the older people to younger people, and it was just exciting.
There was so much energy in here when Neil played basketball. It was, it's undescribable. It got so crowded here that they have to keep crowds out.
It was electric. You know, cheerleaders were up. It was loud, and I don't think it's been like that since.
You had the pep band who was up there playing and jamming and like, you know, and you had kids who played basketball. You had kids who played other sports like myself, and we all came together.
One of the teachers that referred to him as an angel sent by God, and then there's truth to that, you know. It excited the whole school. You know, sports and teams doing well in sports are good for a school and for a community, and that brings the kids together and gives them all. And around someone as good as Neil, that was even more amplified, I think, yeah.
It was a really fun time. And I remember every time the season would end, it'd be a little like sad because it was such a social event for us. It was a lot of fun.
Between his sophomore and junior year, I saw a light bulb go off, like, wow, I could be good at this. And then he started to really buy into it. You know, he did the lifting, he did the conditioning.
He was 7'7", and going back to our weight room with Dr. Tony, proud as could be, got him over 300 pounds. And the more we'd play one-on-one, every now and then he'd grab me. Nothing I could do. Nothing I could do. Neil, leave me alone, thank you.
We followed this team everywhere they went, but it wasn't necessarily because everybody loved basketball. I think there's this sense of like community, right? And again, it was centered, pardon the pun there, but it was centered around Neil.
In the districts, their rival, St. John's High School, they handled pretty easily in the district finals, and then they played a team from Western Mass, and same thing, they handled them pretty well.
Then Neil broke his foot.
The state finals came, and he was a shell of himself. He couldn't move that well. He stayed under the basket. I don't know, I think if he might have ended up with 10 points or so, but he was hurt. You know, he was limping through the whole thing.
They had a team that was, you know, they weren't huge, but when you have a bunch of guys that are 6'5", and we don't have that size, but we had Neil, it could have offset. I feel like if he was healthy that game, we definitely would have won.
Despite the loss, all those memories lingered. They lingered, and that whole atmosphere continued. We didn't lose sight of that. That whole year was still a wonderful year.
And then that's when it really started, this summer after his junior year, and we started getting letters, and then
they got bombarded, I mean, with the recruiting. I got a lot, but not what they got.
And they came in from all over, from Georgia Tech and Ohio State and Notre Dame and Clemson, and it went on and on. And I gave him a box, and we just started throwing stuff in the box, the letters and all that. We had one coach from Southern California who sent us a postcard. I bet he sent it 60 days in a row. He'd send us a postcard, come to Southern California, come to it. I saw him at a tournament, I said, my mailman is gonna kill you, I said.
I looked at it probably differently than Phil and Neil looked at it, because I looked at it from a coaching standpoint and tried to figure out, you know, what's the end game for you, Neil? What do you want to do?
We kind of went down and I said, okay, we're going to do a Ben Franklin, we used to call it in business. The pluses and the minuses of each school. And it was Carolina.
Each year, like I said, he got better and better. And he got bigger and he got stronger and he got more confident.
When we needed him to score 25 points, he scored 25 points. When we needed him to get 15, 20 rebounds, he did. But
he ended up being the Massachusetts Gatorade Player of the Year, the best player in Massachusetts. They don't give that award to you for being tall, for being a good kid, for being smart. They give that to you for being a good basketball player. And Neil, his senior year, was dominant.
Neil Fingleton just being introduced to the crowd. Up front side. Floater to Fingleton. Fingleton will dunk it. Break. Here we go to Fingleton, to the hole. Hook shots in. They go over half, Barry, Moore, inside, Fingleton, dunks it. Lane comes to Moore, inside, Fingleton, hook shot, rolls it in.
But Neil Fingleton, what can we say? They're a very talented team. I think they're going to win the state championship.
And he had a great year, and we had a great year, and we lost a very, very tough, controversial game that still to this day is very hard to swallow. Neil was called for a foul that clearly was not a foul, and it changed the outcome of the game. We lost by 1.
I know Holy Name was devastated about it. It still goes down as one of the greatest high school basketball games that anyone around here has ever seen, that I've ever seen.
I'd like to tell you I'm over it, but I'm not.
Earlier in that season, I mean, he had just a great year, but he was down in DeMatha playing one of the best teams in the country. I think he had like 34, 16, and 12 or something like that, 5 or 6 blocks, and was just filling up the stat sheet.
But Neil played really, really well, and I think Morgan Wooten was the pushing force behind getting him on the McDonald's All-American team.
The Fleet Center sold out tonight, a record crowd for the 23rd annual McDonald's All-America game.
It's the biggest high school basketball event in the country. So they take the top players from around the country and they break them down to an East team and a West team, and they have it at an NBA venue.
Neil Fingleton, 7 feet 6, 310 pounds, Worcester, Mass.
You know, here in the United States, achieving that is the epitome of a high school athlete's career. To be one of the top 20 or so players in the nation chosen to play is incredible. And he was the first, I believe, from Worcester ever to achieve that. So we were all extremely proud of him. And it was wonderful to watch him play out on that court.
Well, finally something to cheer for the home state product, Neil Fingleton, who barely leaves his toes to block that shot into the 3rd row by Brian Boddicker.
And talking to Ron Briscoe today about Fingleton, he said that the kid has a high ceiling.
Playing their style. Well, again challenged by the 7'6" Fingleton, who blocks Boddicker.
So, I mean, the style-wise, I probably didn't suit him that great in the fact that he was injured. I mean, that's what I felt bad about, is the fact that he felt like he had to do it. He was hurt, but it was like everybody was looking forward to seeing him. And hey, Worcester's own, and all of a sudden, you know, now it's at the Boston Garden, and he wasn't going to miss it. So it was great that he did it. He loved the experience, and it's cool to have on the resume of, oh, hey, I was a McDonald's All-American, and he certainly put up the stats to deserve it.
From Conseco Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, it's the 2000 Nike Hoop Summit.
Similar to the McDonald's All-American, you have to be chosen to participate in those camps.
You know, you're looking at saying, okay, in this game here, we're going to see probably 50, 75% of them go on to play in the NBA.
From the MCI Center in Washington, D.C.
Well, this year's matchup features some outstanding guards, some terrific forwards, and 2 of the most highly touted big men in the entire country. In fact, tonight, we'll see the tallest man to play in this game since Sean Bradley, 7 foot 6 inch Neil Fingleton from Worcester, Mass.
He's a real fine scorer. We've played against him. Believe me, he can dunk with the best of them, and he's great in a half-court set offense. He's not only good offensively, but pretty good defensively.
Neil played really well, really, really well in that game, and I think that put him over the top. So he's playing against some of the best kids in the country, and he defended his butt off. He really did. He blocked a lot of shots. And
Sweetney tries to punch one underneath the Fingleton, and the big man knocked it out of bounds.
He's already changed about 3 shots in this ball game, and he's going to do nothing but get better as he plays more basketball.
Sweetney inside, blocked by Fingleton, and he gets the rebound. Points for Julius Page going to the University of Pittsburgh. Fingleton blocks another one, but they call a foul on the big man.
That's as close as you come to a good block.
Coach, you're up by 4, and you had the big fella who was not in the game when you went up by as much as 6. What an impact he was.
He is. He blocked a lot of shots. You know, he hadn't been doing that in practice, I guess, because, you know, the other guys are big there, but he really has changed the game there when he was in, didn't he?
Well, you talk about the immovable object. You got a 7'6" center in the paint that gave you some problems. What can you do to loosen things up?
Well, we got to hit some outside shots, and he's a big boy out there. He's got a lot of blocked shots, and
the Akiti drive. That blocked by Fingleton. It's 5th of the game.
This is Luke Martin. Nice pass to Young. That's rejected by Fingleton. His 6th of the game. And he's probably changed twice that many. And it shows you that maybe stats don't mean everything because those aren't reflected. But here he comes across the lane. A beautiful block with his left hand. The game is a sophomore. Sweeping shot is blocked by Fingleton. And it got numbers. Page goes all the way for the slam. Sweep dumps it into Fingleton. He hasn't shown as much offense in this game, but he's blocked at least 7 shots. Williams gets the pass to Williams, to Fingleton. 4 points for Neil Fingleton. Came off a great defensive rebound. They kept the ball in the middle of the floor. Threw it into Fingleton for a slam. 4 points and 6 blocks in the game for Neil Fingleton.
Every time he walked into a gym, he had a target on his back. And it was not only the opponent, but in a lot of cases, it was the opposing fans. He was such a sweetheart of a kid from the moment he came until he left. But when he stepped on the court, I saw a nice mean streak develop where he would not allow himself to get pushed around from the standpoint of guys ganging up on him, trying to take his legs out.
You're that big, you're gonna have injuries. We don't know what that's like, but especially with him, almost every person he played against had a forearm in his lower back.
You know, the body at 7'7" is totally different than the guy who's 6'3" or 6'2".
You know, you'll hear Shaquille O'Neal talk about, hey, a foul's a foul. Just because I'm big and strong doesn't mean it's not a foul. So they let a lot of things go with him. And I'm not making any excuses for him, but
at the end of his senior year on this hoop, he went up for a dunk against St. Peter Marion, and he landed, and I just saw him just wince a little bit and hold his back. And I'm like, oh. But he played, he sat down, he came back in and played. But the next day he came to school, he said his back was killing him. I never thought he was the same after that.
Anytime you hurt your back, it's not good. But when you hurt your back and you don't have that pliability, I think sometimes it doesn't work in your favor real good.
He had to get an operation in the summer. So he had committed to Carolina.
And he and I bonded over that. I had back surgery as a 19-year-old freshman after my freshman year playing at North Carolina. So I kind of tried to help Neil through that, the process of what it was going to be. It was the best thing for him to get the mobility back, to be out of pain, to be able to play freely.
So they decided to redshirt him. So basically what that means is you come to practice every day, you're still on scholarship. And then now he has 4 years left to play.
And so Neil worked really hard to get healthy, worked really hard to stay in shape. And I thought he was really in position his freshman year on the court to have a chance to help us.
The basketball, this is Melendez looking aside for Fingleton, who is huge at 7'5".
Fingleton's a freshman, he's from England. They're looking for that outside shot. Davidson really sagging on his own.
And Doherty trying to find some combination to get the ball in the basket. Fingleton, one go. Capel strong with the offensive rebound. It counts.
Beautiful. Fantastic play.
Well, when you need your senior to step up, you need a play like that from Jason Capel.
Well, we talked about the offensive rebounding. Good shot here by the freshman, but look at Capel crashing the boards. I've seen that a few times.
Again, he was the big lefty, big smooth, called himself Larry Bird every time he took a shot in practice. He'd yell out Bird as he let it go. So you wanted him to have success. Everyone did, the crowd did. So you tried to get him the ball in the places where you knew he liked it. And for me, it's, he took a shot and I say good pass. Whether he missed it long or he missed it short or, whether it didn't hit the rim, I just wanted to be there at all times to uplift his spirits because playing in North Carolina isn't easy. It's not easy. Again, you're playing in a tradition unlike any other in college basketball. There's a pressure that comes with that. There's an expectation, especially when you have a McDonald's All-American tag coming with you. So I tried to protect Neil a little bit, as we all did.
He was recruited by one group of coaches. And before he got there, Bill Guthridge, the head coach, retired. And they brought in a guy named Matt Doherty.
A Carolina guy, but it's not someone we were familiar with. That staff didn't recruit Neil. So Neil's coming in, his class is coming in with a staff that essentially doesn't know him, didn't recruit him, doesn't have that relationship. There was a style of play, and I don't think they factored Neil into that.
We talked about it down in Carolina. I talked to his coaches. I talked to his the ex-coaches, Guthridge and a few of them. Ultimately, he wanted to come back.
You know, that was a whole nother crazy circus story. I mean, everybody was so excited in Worcester because now they could go see him play at Holy Cross.
He went somewhere where he was wanted, somewhere where he could play, somewhere that he could have the personal success with people that he knew cared about him, that believed in him. And the fact of the matter is, he just wanted to play basketball.
At the time, with all the Big East schools and the ACC schools and UCLA and everybody, right, is recruiting him, he always kept Holy Cross in the mix.
When he was here at Holy Name, you're going to have the normal high school rivalries. So you're going to have the kids from St. John's or the kids from Burncoat or the kids from St. Peter's saying, well, he's Holy Name's guy, he's not our guy. But then when he went to Holy Cross, he became everyone's guy. He was Worcester's guy. He was Central Mass's guy. So everyone was rooting for Neil when he was at Holy Cross. And Holy Cross, there was a big buzz about those games.
Everybody should know, big guy, got to keep the ball up high. Oh, and shoot. Well, nice to see some inside play here. Here we go.
Big man right there. Fingleton knocks it down over McGonigal. Here's to Kinsey. Fingleton's alone. Hey, Ernie, he plays high school ball here.
And Neil is a very smart and high IQ. You know, to be 7'6" is a very difficult thing to be. I know everybody wants height in basketball, but 7'6" is gigantic, no matter what you say, you know? So him developing and letting him play his game. Neil wasn't a back to the basket bump and bruiser. Neil could shoot the ball really well, lefty, smooth stroke, 15 feet, even up to threes, but he could give you a good, you know, solid foundation. And that's what Coach Willard allowed him to do.
He had all the tools. He had the great footwork, that soft touch, whether he was taking a jump shot over people on the baseline, whether he was shooting free throws.
He's got a remarkably smooth touch for a man his size. To have the touch on the basketball that he has is really incredible.
And he gets points for that haircut too, doesn't he?
We'll give him points.
So you're in a car, maybe a 20-minute ride with Neil, and that was a maybe 2-minute song, and he wasn't just going to play it once or twice and then maybe play a couple other songs. You're going to get Holiday Road 10 times in a row on that 20-minute ride at full volume. So at the beginning of the car ride, oh, this song is great. Yeah, I remember this. By the time the car ride's over, you couldn't take it anymore. And you walked out of the car deaf.
Big guys usually just to fit your head, your legs, you're driving some sort of SUV. And here's this 7'5", 7'6" guy who walks in, and he's in a Volkswagen Golf.
Tiny for someone so big. So when he was driving it, you'd be sitting next to him, and you'd look over, and all you'd see is these huge legs next to you. You'd have to do a full turn to find him because he's all the way back, almost driving from the trunk.
His seat, his driver's seat, is pushed all the way to the back seat. You know, it was perfect for him how he made it happen. And I believe it might have been a stick shift at that. Like,
he was driving one day, presumably he was going a little over the speed limit, and you know, the sirens go off, and Neil's about to be pulled. He's getting pulled over.
So he's leaning back. The seat would literally tilted all the way back, right? So his head is just right underneath the sunroof, and he's leaning way back like this.
So when the cop approached him, Neil just, you know, he rolls down the passenger back seat window, and I think he threw the cop off. So, you know, I think the cop was like, "What is going on here?" And I think he realized, oh my God, there's a 7'7" man, and he's able to roll down the back window as opposed to the front window.
I can't even fit in this thing. I'm 6'3". So, Coach, I love this car. This is my baby. Drives me to go pick my car up, and
I love everything about your face and grace. Any time of day, in any place, you're never out of place. I love your stance, tone, the flexion, perfection, the way you suggestively, non-suggestive. From me, you get no objections. I stay tuned in, serious.
I remember on several occasions him showing me an impersonation that he did of Mick Jagger. And let me tell you, it was complete with leg kick, and you've never seen someone who's 7'6" kick their leg out and grab the microphone stand like Mick Jagger does when Neil did it. And man, he had everybody in stitches over that one.
And I could always remember that the first thing I said to him was like, Neil, make sure you get stretched out and you're ready to go because we're going to go hard. And he walked over to the rim. He put his hands up on the rim and was stretching his back, holding the rim. And like I said, I've seen a lot, man, but I've never seen that.
He helped us a lot in practices. And, when he got in the game, he did his opportunity. I think he was taking time to get himself back in conditioning. He always had some small injuries here and there that he always had to take care of. So
we dominated. Yes, we played in the Patriot League. We were a great team. We had well over 20 wins. We went to the tournament. I think both Neil and I, we didn't play as much, on that particular year, but we took pride in making sure those that did play a lot more of the minutes were ready to compete, and we expected to win every game. And again, Neil and he played a big role in that.
I'm gonna let it shout. Hip-hop, I love you, it's your time. This isn't ode to you, clearly. Hip-hop, I love you dearly. You give me goosebumps anytime I hear you near me. This isn't ode to you, clearly. Hip-hop, I love you dearly. You give me goosebumps anytime I hear you near me.
Holy Cross just brought out the trump card.
Oh, there you go.
7'6" Neil Fingleton.
And he wasn't even supposed to be here a few weeks back ago. I know he had a personal situation with his family.
I think what hurt him the most is he wasn't there, and he was out here.
In Neil's second year at Holy Cross, 2004, Neil got some bad news that our dad had died.
Yeah, that was a tough time. The whole team, rallied around him as a teammate, and he had such good friends as teammates, and they were all so supportive of him.
Even he had personal setbacks, family losses, major stuff that impacts any kid or anybody going through, 20s or whatever. And Neil just always seemed very resilient.
And when he came back, it was kind of a mutual that maybe it's just time to move on, and go on to the next step.
He hunkered down. I mean, Holy Cross was a tough school for him. And, he was really proud of that diploma, to graduate from Holy Cross. Because, I mean, he promised his mom no matter what happened, he was going to graduate from college.
Very proud as his teacher to see him get his degree in history. Above all things, that's the best achievement that we can take credit for.
Well, one thing that we really loved talking about was history. And that was, I became a history teacher. I was majoring in history when he was still in high school. My father got married. We were down the vineyard. We shared a room together. And I walk in, he's got the History Channel on. And so that just, we just started talking about the show that was on, and then we ended up talking for about an hour about God knows what. He was a smart guy.
The NBA Development League, it was known as the NBDL when it first started. It's a tough league, it's very competitive, but the good part about it now, and probably when Neil played, is that you had a direct connection to an NBA team, to an NBA organization where you're kind of partners with them. And it's a good way to be a professional under an NBA umbrella, under the NBA eye, with hopefully a chance to get called up to be on an NBA roster.
Neil brought a lot, just a lot of fans that year to the Boston Frenzy. So he liked it because, hey, listen, it's technically he's playing professional basketball now. I think he kind of used that to play in Europe, really. And Joe Bryant Jelly Bean was really good for him as far as contacts and calling people, hey, this kid can play. He's been banged up and he had a back issue.
Once he came back from America, obviously he'd put on weight. He was a lot stronger. He kind of dominated Division I defensively. I think he led the league in rebounds. He led the league in blocked shots that year. And to be honest, it was kind of like fortunate that we had him for that year because we knew he was going to go on to go be professional in Europe.
but he did really enjoy the different experience, because basketball, it's a universal sport, not just America, and you did get to see different ways of life, different communities and different culture.
When we were over there in Spain with them, we went out to the pub, and as soon as you walked in the door, the whole pub just erupted. Fingleton, Fingleton.
And it was good to see him, you know, still succeeding, especially after having back surgery, like to come back after that. And then, you know, at his height, to have to travel. And in Europe, I think they were doing a lot of bus travel. So even just to be able to play at that level after everything he had been through, it was astounding to me.
I think when Neil realised that the basketball wasn't going to be the career that he thought it would be, so the NBA, I think he had come to terms with that wasn't going to happen. But he realised that he did need to do something else because he was still young, and what he was going to do was still undecided.
He never said, oh, my career is shortchanged because I hurt my back, what am I going to do? One door closed, opens the other. And I try and use that example with all athletes today. If a kid doesn't make a team and he's like, oh, I'm never going to play sports again. You think of kids like Neil, one door shuts, and you're going to open up another door.
And just shows his strength of character, that he got him, pulled himself up and found something else that he loved as well, which was the acting.
I thought to myself, he's been drinking. I said, did you not think that's a bit? And he said, oh no, don't say that. He said, I'm going to do it, right? And he always said along the way, I'm going to be the next James Bond villain.
I mean, there'd be times you call him on the phone and you say, hey, Neil, and he's already in mid-character of one of the James Bond villains. He's shouting out lines from one of the movies from the 70s or 80s, so the acting came pretty natural to him, and with his size.
I was extremely proud of him because he went and did what he wanted to do. It was tough because we're such a basketball family, and like we always nail basketball, and the pressure and everything, and then finally he just said, you know what, I'm gonna go do what I want to do, and you know, we all looked at it like, you know what, go do what you want to do.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Eddie Russell had a good line. He said he's been acting all these years as a basketball player, so he's a natural at it.
The first role that I remember that Neil had agreed to do, and was absolutely tremendous, what I remember, I used to show people it, as soon as it became available. I was saying, have you seen this, have you seen this? And it was the advert, the commercial for Miller Lite.
He had said too that like, it was unscripted, right? So they would literally, I mean, the makeup was unbelievable. And then they literally had people just walking through that had no idea.
The opportunity for Neil to apply for the Guinness Tallest Man title, I think, came about through Kenneth Early Agency. I think it was they who suggested that if Neil had this title, then the offer of work might come in. And when Neil got accurately measured by Guinness, I remember when they came out and they did that, Neil turned out to be taller than Christopher Greener and replaced Christopher Greener in title before Christopher died. But the fact that he did do that, it did change things for Neil.
Coming through Jeremy, I said, well, did you get the part? And he said, well, no, well, I won't find out, you know, till probably after Christmas. But he said, I did get a part in a pantomime, Jack and the Beanstalk. I said, all right, okay. And I said, and what part are you playing?
Neil was remarkably good, wasn't he? Because, you know, I don't think I've ever seen it before where you get like an actual tall person to play a giant in a pantomime. I've never seen that before or since. It's a tremendous amount of pressure to put on an actor because, you know, they've got to have that kind of be that intimidating. The kids have got to be like intimidated by the giant.
The size of Neil, the scene that he was doing, he had to fling one of the other actors around and wasn't entirely sure how it was going to go. I think she's going to end up in hospital.
But he was so careful, wasn't he? Yeah. And he was always checking in on me about like going, are you okay? How are you feeling?
I'll never forget the reaction that he got from the kids in the audience. They just utterly blown away by it. Like it was, you know, like the best special effects ever. It was like they were so enthralled by it. And it made you realise, oh, this is the power of like theatre. I know it's panto, but this is the power of theatre that, you know, instead of a model or like a set design or sound effects or whatever, to just have Neil blew their minds.
To work with him on stage was brilliant, and I used to love it because I'd say, talk to the audience, and he could just come up and stand behind me. Looking down, right, I can see right up your nose and all that I used to do to him.
And I can see right down your throat.
Can you see me, dinner? It was funny, and I used to sit on his knee. There was a point when I sat on his knee, and he'd get down. I've got a picture of him. He's actually taller than me, kneeling down.
Do you know, I was in Leeds last night and they had too much to drink and I fell over.
You never did. You fell over in Leeds?
I did.
What happened, little John?
I banged me in on Bradford.
I think it's sometimes difficult for people to look different, whatever it may be. I was always conscious and aware of not being disrespectful to him. You know, like people do. You know, I felt like I wanted to protect him. And people, you know, if the people all that point, well, leave him alone, and you know what I mean?
Neil is a lesson in how to take something that could be your burden and could be the thing that weighs you down and stops you enjoying life, and just use it to make your life 100 times better. I mean, look at the experiences the guy had. He met so many amazing people, so many famous people. I mean, to have the opportunity to work with Keanu Reeves.
47 Ronin is absolutely probably my favourite thing that Neil did.
I heard him coming from about 20 metres away, so he had his full costume on, and all you could hear was poof, 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 poof. And this giant comes out with armour on, and you're just like, wow.
The fact that he had two significant parts in that, so he was I think it was the Lovecraftian warrior, which obviously you can see on all of the artwork for that film.
Keanu and Neil came on and did the fight scene on the last day, the entire scene, front to back, no breaks. His footwork, his balance, his timing, you could see where all of that basketball, all the basketball disciplinary had fallen into that as well. Like, he knew how his body moved, he knew how to swing the strikes with each glance.
But also he was heavily involved with another scene where he was helping with the CGI. So we'd wear the costume, and he was plotting out all of the coordinates for what the artists would do with that. And
at the end of the day, he was a workaholic who loved his job and loved the things that he did, I guess.
When Neil got the part for Doctor Who, we were absolutely over the moon. Couldn't believe that he got into such an iconic television series that's been going on for decades over here.
The Fisher King in the script is described as this huge creature, really tall, you know, strong, powerful. Toby Whithouse had written a character that came from a dry desert planet. He talked about the Fisher King's head being like a dried up skull of a horse. We did feel when we were shooting that Neil really brought something extra, because even though he knew his voice would be replaced, he gave a great performance as the Fisher King on that day we were filming. It certainly helped Peter Capaldi. The roar that you hear first was performed by Corey Taylor from Slipknot.
So fitting that they would have to get Corey Taylor to do a roar for someone so large.
The voice of the Fisher King is Peter Serafinowicz, who the voice of Darth Maul, among others. And then Neil is the Fisher King that we see. All these elements fed into a creature that needed to be coherent as a whole.
I got the sequence of episodes mixed up, so I'd practically told the whole of the Northeast to tune in for Doctor Who to watch this episode, The Fisher King. Well, it wasn't on. It was on the following week.
He did motion capture for Ultron in Avengers Age of Ultron, and also in the movie Jupiter Ascending.
The Jupiter Ascending film, when he sent me a photo of him with Mila Kunis, I thought, he's actually doing really well with this, and he's meeting some fantastic people. He's going to some amazing locations. He's got a career ahead of him with what he's doing.
When he called and was like, Billy, hey, I'm going to be in Game of Thrones. Now, I mean, Game of Thrones was blowing up at the time. He had never seen it to that point.
the Wildling army is attacking the wall. And of course they've got a selection of giants to help them out. And there were two main giant characters, Dongo the Doomed, which is the character that I played, and Mag the Mighty, which is the character played by Neil Fingleton.
No one's breached it, no one's going to get through until Mag the Mighty lifts that gate above his head and comes charging like a juggernaut down that corridor. It's one of the scariest sights on film.
The makeup, initially it was about 3.5 hours, but it's a real costume as well. The costumes have substance and weight, which is one of the the beauties of Game of Thrones. It's often praised for its reality, and the costumes are very real. Although we are shooting in front of a green screen, these giant characters are size enhanced in post production, and so it was a battle scene, high action, very very physically demanding, and is one of the great battle scenes of Game of Thrones, of which there are many.
His character appeared on a set of Royal Mail postage stamps. I couldn't believe it, just looking and seeing my brother on a postage stamp. Behind the outfit, obviously, but it was ultimately him. The Game of Thrones fans are one in a million. They're incredible. When Neil was going to the conventions and he was going to sit and sign his autograph and people were coming to see him, I thought, I don't think many people would be going to get your autograph, and how wrong I was, because he would then have to go and get a big batch of photographs printed off, and then he would go to the convention, and I always remember Neil sitting next to John Chalice.
But he, that when he said that they actually pay for his autograph, I said, wow.
Good afternoon from Roleplay Conventions. It's an honour to be here, and hello from Germany.
But just to see queues and queues of people all wanting to see him.
When Neil was going to the conventions, he would have a St. Cuthbert's collection box. And Neil was quite passionate about making a contribution locally, and he had some friends and we had some family who had used St. Cuthbert's Hospice.
And he would put half of that, or most of that, into the charity box. Very proud, yes.
He was absolutely just overwhelmed that people would want to come and first of all see him, but to take away his autograph. It was an amazing opportunity, and I think he realised at that point that the acting work had taken off and he was doing something with it, and the basketball at this point was behind him now because he'd found something else.
Even though he made it big time, his personality never changed one little bit. He could talk to Keanu Reeves exactly the same as he could talk to Steve Butler from Thornaby.
He could have turned. He could have been a real ass. He could have been a real entitled jock athlete type, and he wasn't, and he never was. He never went to that spot, ever.
Like, he was never one to brag about himself. I mean, he could have been meeting the President of the United States later in the evening. You saw him in the afternoon and you'd never know about it, because that's just who he was.
He was over here, and he was part of our Holy Name community, and he became part of the Worcester community. But he never, ever forgot about England. Any chance he had to talk about home and his family.
Neil was a real home bird. He loved where he lives, and he always said when he comes back, he's buying his mum's house off her. He's going to live in his mum's house, and he's going to stay there, no matter what happens, no matter how big he got, no matter what would happen to him. He's going to live in that house, and that's the end of it. And it's basically that's exactly what he done.
He could just retrofit himself and enjoy, the amenities that the rest of us take for granted. Because, like I said, he's got a shower head in his stomach, or.
And this is my shower. It's a lot easier having a shower this way than, constantly that way, like how it used to be. So.
He just would say stuff and just do it, and it was hard work. It wasn't handed to him. He worked for everything he got.
The custom-made bike was the biggest waste of money Neil had ever spent. I don't know where it got made. It was a fantastic piece of equipment to look at, and no doubt a fantastic piece of engineering. I think I only saw him on the bike twice. It was this massive construction. Can't even describe how how big it was. And eventually just became used as a clothes horse.
Just, I mean, you know that he loved Donny Phils and horses and sort of just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There was always something that Neil was thinking about.
Yep, Neil did have a little bit of a go at the clothing business. He and a friend got set up, and he had some support with some contacts, and he set up a website, and the website was called 7'7".
It was clothes for taller people, so they could get shirts, jackets, trousers, everything, you know, that would fit them properly.
I come from a family of tall people, so I've always seen with growing up with my brother, who's 6'9", my sister's 6'3", buying clothes was always a problem when we were growing up, and it was quite expensive, as you can imagine. I've been through it. I know how hard it is to find clothes that fit. You should have the option to buy nice jeans that fit, nice shirts that fit, and obviously with a reasonable price. And I think that's what I can offer.
He kind of said to me, look, Steve, I know you helped me out when I wasn't making that much money, and to show my appreciation to this, I'm going to sponsor the Tees Valley Marks, because he set up his own company called 7'7", and his 7'7" was the shirt jersey sponsor for the club, and that's something that I like about Neil, because that's loyalty, and sometimes you don't get that now in basketball.
There was a story going back to the film auditions, and Neil was thinking, oh well, it's going to be a part where I'm going to be revealed. I might have a line or two, and you'll see his face. And I thought, oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Neil didn't get the part, but the feedback was that he didn't get the part because he wasn't ugly enough. Neil had an operation before playing the role of Mag the Mighty, and it was minor surgery really. He had 2 toes straightened. He had a couple of complications to do with the anaesthetic, and then he had an infection, and then sadly he ended up on a life support machine as a result of that. Thankfully, Neil overcame that. I think he was in there for about 15 days.
He came home, and I was going round every day. And he said to me, there's no need for you to keep coming every day, you're working. Don't keep coming every day. Oh, I says, I don't mind. I'll worry if I don't come. Anyway, I'd gone in this day, I was taking him something to eat, and I was talking away, and he said, oh, have you seen my new mat? I said, yeah. Oh no, not you again. And I said, but I know that's not meant for me. What it was.
We had finished shooting scenes for Series 7. Again, it was arduous work. The costumes are large and heavy and cumbersome, and the makeup process is lengthy. I could tell that there was something not quite right. I wouldn't say he was unwell, but he was mopping his brow all the time and short of breath. And every time I said to him, take a break, you don't have to push yourself this hard. He said, no, I'm fine, everything's cool, we can carry on. And we finished shooting the scenes, and it was a month later, and I read the story on the internet.
Well, tonight, the Worcester community is in mourning at the loss of 36-year-old Neil Fingleton. At 7'6" tall, Fingleton was the tallest basketball player at both Holy Name High School and the College of the Holy Cross. A native of England, he came to the United States at 16 years old. According to reports, he passed away Saturday from heart failure.
It was so infuriating to read all of the time that Neil had a heart attack just because he was tall. All giants die of a heart attack. Neil wasn't a giant in that sense. He was just genetically tall. I know he's classed as a giant. And Neil didn't have a heart attack, and I think it was just assumed from the outset that that was what had happened. It took a while to get all of the results back, but Neil died of aspirate pneumonia, so he ingested something onto his lungs, and that was the cause of Neil's death.
Just didn't seem real. Doesn't now. It feels like he's still going to shoot somewhere or something.
That was a tough day. Yeah.
It struck me really, really hard because he approached everything with such great courage. And it was so shocking that he had suddenly gone. A man of such strength and stature could just pass away so quickly and so easily.
I've got one final question.
Sure.
I'm not going to ask it. I've got a little video for you to watch. Just when you're ready, Phil, just press play.
Hi, it's Christine, Neil's mum. I would just like to thank you for taking part in this documentary. And I have one final question. What is it that you remember most about Neil and why?
You guys are fucking killing me. Neil was a good soul. He was brought up well. He was a good soul. He had this gift, which was also a curse, but he took it all in stride. When it benefited him, he took advantage of it, you know, from a basketball point of view and a career point of view. And when it worked against him, he didn't use it as a crutch. He wasn't a victim. Neil was a strong kid. You know, he grew from a shy kid to a strong, upstanding, good man, a really good man. That's what I remember most.
We thought that we were going to change Neil's life, but in the end, he really changed our lives in a lot of ways.
I would have to say, just his patience and kindness and ability to be happy with people and enjoy people's company. And it brought it around, and everyone else felt the same when they were with him. You just felt like, he was your friend, and someone you could count on and trust and be comfortable with. And I think that's why he has such a big network.
Talking to you, Paul, about that Bruce Springsteen song, Terry song. They broke the mold, and they broke the mold with Big Neil. I'm gonna miss him. I miss him already. So.
His kindness, his stature, his being so happy and positive. And he struggled in basketball in the beginning, but he never struggled with meeting new people or meeting friends, and it wasn't just his height, it was just his kindness. So I think that's what I miss most about him. We need more kind people.
I remember Neil, mostly about him was his compassion and his empathy, especially when their dad passed, and he would give phone calls to check in and see how everything was going.
His humility, I think, his humility most. He could have acted like, he was the big man on campus, and he didn't. He didn't. He's just a real humble kid. He really was. So probably on a less serious note, I do remember the one time of this, after he graduated and everything, we ran into each other in a bar here in Worcester, and you would not want to try to keep up with him drinking, we'll tell you that.
With me, I just remember his smile. I mean, almost every conversation we had wasn't necessarily about basketball, about whatever. He always had a smile on his face.
With Neil, the thing I remember most is just that infectious personality that makes you want to just have fun, laugh, joke.
My son came here to celebrate a birthday party, and Neil was doing the lines at the football game. And of course, as a 7-year-old looking up at Neil, the boys were just so fascinated. He stopped everything, put down the lines, came over and said, Mrs. Ivas, give me Michael, let me pick him up. Come on, boys, come with me. And they just were in heaven. They thought this was the best thing ever. But that to me is Neil.
I get up on Neil's shoulders, and Neil's a young kid at this time, and we go over to the basketball hoop. Well, the young kid that I had filming, it took him a few takes. Poor Neil, his legs are wobbling now. You know, he's got this 200-pound guy on his shoulders, and his legs are wobbling, and we keep doing it. I'm like, Neil, how you doing? You okay? And he's like, I'm all right. Well, years later, of course, he has back problems. And so he'd always say to me, Shea, you fucked up my back. You fucked up my back.
His love of life, the jokes, the being on the back of the bus and hearing him singing songs and us making up his own songs.
Always came over and asked me how I was doing. How's your day going? So the memories that I have of him have nothing to do with basketball. It's all the stuff, the kind of kid he was. I mean, they did a great job getting him prepared for what he would encounter when he came to the United States. And then obviously he had an unbelievable support system here with Phil and Meg and JP, and then the kids that he played with. And this whole community really opened their arms to him. And he was a very big part of what was going on in Worcester during that period of time.
We had a memorial for Neil up here, and his brother and his friends came, and it's one of the first things I said. Your brother was in the Game of Thrones, oh my God. He goes, we didn't know about it. Because we were out on a Friday night, he didn't say anything to us, and he was gone for like 2 months. He didn't tell anybody, and even when he came back, he didn't tell anybody. And one more time, that's Neil.
I mean, I want to say he was fortunate that he came in and with the people he was with, but he brought something too. My parents didn't suffer fools. You know, that wasn't part of our game, and there were plenty of people that we grew up with, were in that neighborhood, and their families in the neighborhood, and they didn't either. So, okay, fine, you're an attraction, but if you don't have something behind you, and something that is stronger than just being tall, you know, that's not gonna work. It's not gonna work in our neighborhood, it's not gonna really work in the city. And so his strength and his ability to assimilate and his ability to give back and to be someone who was more than his 18 years, 17, 18 years would suggest.
Some people are brought on this earth to make other people happy, man, and he's gone, but those stories, there's a million of them.
But I think when you look back at his effect on so many people, for such a young guy, to have so many people care about him, to have so many people still touched by him, that's a life well lived. Too short, and we miss him.
I think I would like people to take away from this the fact that everybody's different and you've got to adapt to your own circumstances. In Neil's case, it was physical circumstances, being extra tall and being unusual. And I think taking away everything that we've seen Neil do just really proves and shows that you can succeed at something, even though it might be ridiculous. Initially we thought, acting, that's not going to be the case. But he stuck at it, he tried, he did what he could, and he really made a good go of it. And I think had we not lost Neil, he would have been in some really tremendous up-and-coming parts. I think at this point you would have seen Neil's face in one of those films.
We are normal, as you would say, working class family, always worked hard, and you know, the chance of one of your kids up and off to America, going back quite a few years now, was, you just didn't hear of things like that, you know. And I'd just like to think that people would follow the dreams, just like he did.
The world is a lesser place without him. Anybody who met him can easily say they are better for knowing him than not. And I think he enriched everyone's lives who were involved with him. There's very few people who can say that. Very, very few. Christine knows it, we know it. I'm sure at the end of this you will know it. And hopefully everyone gets a glimpse of who he was, not just the size. The personality was far bigger. And it doesn't matter if he was 6'4", that would have shone anyway. That's the guy Neil was. And he'll always be, to us, he'll always just be Big Neil. There is nothing more or less. He's just a friend, a family member, and a good guy. A very honest, genuine guy. It's that easy.
Neil had a favourite poem. It's Rudyard Kipling's If. And I think he liked the poem because it's an inspirational poem about challenges that you would face. And Neil had a fair few challenges, and he had changes of career and obstacles which would present themselves. And I think Neil related to the words of the poem. I think he could apply a lot of what he read in there to his own circumstances. And I think Neil really lived out the words of that poem.
If you can keep your head when all about you
are losing theirs and blaming it on you.
If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you,
but make allowance for their doubting too.
If you can wait and not be tired by waiting.
Or being lied about, don't deal in lies.
Of being hated, don't give way to hating.
And yet, don't look too good nor talk too wise.
If you can dream and not make dreams your master.
If you can think and not make thoughts your aim.
If you can meet with triumph and disaster.
And treat those two imposters just the same.
If you can bear to hear the truth, you've spoken.
Twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools.
Or watch the things you gave your life to broken.
And stoop and build him up with worn-out tools.
If you can make one heap of all your winnings.
And risk it on one turn of pitch and toss.
And lose and start again at your beginnings.
And never breathe a word about your loss.
If you can force your heart, your nerve, and sinew.
To serve your turn long after they are gone.
And so hold on when there is nothing in you.
Accept the will which says to them, hold on.
If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue.
Or walk with kings nor lose a common touch.
If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you.
If all men count with you, but none too much.
If you can fill the unforgiven minute.
With 60 seconds worth of distance run.
Yours is the earth and everything that's in it.
And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Shout out Death Star Studio. I see you, big. The song is dedicated to Neil Fingleton. It's the life of time to Neil Fingleton. December 18th, 1980 to February 25th, 2017. Rest in peace. Big Smooth with all the moves. From the UK to UNC, the Holy Cross, where he graduated with a degree in history. All along, he was making history with a few stops in between. On to the ABA, then the D-League. Plus he flexes hoop game on the scenes in Greece, Italy, and Spain. All before the big screen, TV or the telly. Born to be larger than life. Genetics made him the tallest ever British-born man. But that was just a glimpse at the size of his hand. You know the big homie thing, he did a bit of everything. Big Neil lived his life large and legendary. Once he stopped playing ball, he moved to LA and jumped into acting with both feet, so to speak. For Big Neil, there was no goal attached too tall. Next thing you know, Fingy lands X-Men first class, 47 rolling, casino split screen. Next thing, GOT, he was Mac the Mighty. You know the big homie Fingy did a bit of everything. Big Neil lived his life legendary. The Sagittarius was anything but ordinary. See, Neil was the youngest of three, so at a young age he learned to always play fair.